everybody in serial killer country. My name is Brittany Ransom.
And my name's Brian Joyner.
And this is When Killers Get Caught, a podcast devoted to deep dives into the lives and psyches of the killers we love to learn about. Each week, Brian and I find a true crime story that resonated with us. Then I will discuss one well-known or lesser-known killer, go deep into their childhood, lives, methodology, and most importantly, how they got caught. And then we get a little spooky and we'll learn something about cryptids or the supernatural with Brian.
Yay! I never know what to say after that. That's me.
I don't know. Is it a good intro? Who knows?
Yes, that's me.
But yeah. So I guess it's just simple. We don't have any extra sponsors this week.
No.
But we do have some exciting news, which is that there are t-shirts coming.
Yeah.
In the next couple weeks. We got the first test products back in and they look good. And we'll have like a slightly thicker shirt for folks who, I don't know, want to be warm this summer.
I hope not. Yeah, extra sweaty.
And then a lighter weight shirt that's a little more snug for people who like those like fits.
I would hope they don't want to be sweaty. They're black shirts too.
Well, you can get them in different colors.
Okay, well, the ones that we got are black shirts. Okay?
That's because you and I have dark souls.
This is true.
But yeah, that's something that's coming soon. We are working on setting up tiers for like a Patreon.
Yes, we're getting there.
That we can maintain kind of a less ad-centric podcast. Nobody likes to have the action disrupted multiple times.
No, yeah, we can have, like you said, less ads, but that way we can still
afford to run a podcast.
Exactly. There you go.
Hey. But either way, this week in True Crime, I happened to come across a video from the New York Post about a woman who, how do I explain this? So she got arrested first. We'll explain that part first. She got arrested for here we go. So her name is Jessica Boomershine. And this happened in Ohio. And she was arrested for breaking into an 85-year-old's home and assaulting him at gunpoint. And so she's in Dayton, Ohio in like the booking area. And so there's a video. The video is her. While she's waiting for booking, I don't know why she thought this would work, but she stands up on her chair and tries to climb into the ceiling.
Are there video cameras?
Yes, there's video footage of her trying to do this.
Okay, so you got CCTV stuff going on. Okay.
And she like wriggles through the ceiling, but like, I always say this to people all the time. It's not like the movies. Those drop ceilings cannot hold people weight.
Hell no.
And so she immediately falls back down as soon as she gets up.
Like they could barely. I bet they couldn't even hold my weight.
And so on top of facing, armed robbery charges and assaulting an 85-year-old man, she's now facing charges for trying to escape prison that she hadn't even gotten into yet.
Oh my god.
And destruction of property for ruining their ceiling in central booking.
Girl, you should just sit in your seat.
She looked a little bruised in the face when I saw her photo.
Well, she fell from the ceiling.
Right, I think she must have just fell and hit her face, but like a lot falls down. And then she's like dangling. So yeah, you can look it up online. Her name is Jessica Boomershine, and poor Jessica.
No, poor Jessica. That's their fault.
People are just not the smartest.
Things don't work out the way in movies. No, not at all.
But that was the one that I saw, and I just chuckled for an entirely too long time.
Hilarious. Mission Possible.
Yeah, Mission Impossible. That's true. Impossible. You're gonna get out of prison, fam. Like what? Like and like it's not even like because when I first saw a parent jailbreak comes crashing down. I thought maybe she was in prison and she had orchestrated some sort of a prison break. Mm-hmm. She was barely in. She had just gotten arrested.
You were just in the booking section. Oh my goodness.
But yeah, and then she fell on a trash can. It was just totally you comedy.
You poor stupid idiot.
That's really what you got to say. You poor idiot.
Oh goodness. Okay, well. Hey, guess what?
What?
I got a story from PA.
Oh, good. I love Pennsylvania bullshit.
This one comes from Lackawanna County.
I couldn't point that out on a map.
I think it's northeast from here.
Oh,
I think.
Northeast from where we are?
I think it's eastern.
So heading towards New York?
I think it's heading towards
New York, Jersey?
Lackawanna. Come on, I know where that's at. I think I've driven by there
It
before.
sounds familiar, but I
know.
I couldn't pull it on the map.
I think it's around the area. It has to be around the area. Anyway, headline reads, police break up exorcism at PA Home Depot.
I saw this about 10 times across all of my Pennsylvania groups. Even in my local community, like neighborhood group, this was posted.
I found this is actually posted in Penn Live, so
It's been everywhere all weekend.
I've been holding on to this. I was like, I saw it and I was like, saving you for Monday.
I'm trying to like look at the map right now. Where are you? But it happened in Lackawanna. I didn't look to see where it happened.
So it says police in Lackawanna County broke up an exorcism in the lumber aisle of a home improvement store Monday.
It was a Home Depot.
So this was last Monday, the 24th. Yeah.
It was a Home Depot.
So it says, wait, I guess.
Oh, it's not far from Scranton.
Yeah, like I said, Northeastern.
Everybody knows Scranton.
Yeah. The Electric City. Yes, the office.
Electric City.
The Electric City.
That ain't no Electric City.
It is the Electric City.
Ain't nothing going on in Scranton.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry. I'm such a Philly snob. I'm so sorry, y'all.
Terrible.
I only love Philadelphia, and I'm sad I'm not there now.
You gotta give some respect to Scranton, just a little bit.
I want to go back.
To Scranton? I know,
No,
right?
to Philly. I've probably only driven through Scranton.
I've been there for a little bit. But it says details of scares on what was actually going on inside the Home Depot.
Did they say why they were doing the exorcism?
It says for bad. It says the police came. They escorted people out for bad behavior.
It was because of the trees. The
yes,
lumber.
yes. It says
they were trying to
the exorcism was
let
held.
The spirits out of the wood.
The exorcism was held for the trees that had been turned into lumber.
Yep. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
That's what I think of when I think of Pennsylvania. That sort of weirdness.
I don't even know how that would work. I've seen exorcisms before. Well, the movies.
The exorcism of
Emily Rose and.
Well, I was thinking what's Rosewood of Rosewood.
Yeah, Emily Rosewood.
Oh.
There you go. Oh my God. But I just don't know how it will work out. You throw holy water onto the lumber.
Yep, it's been everywhere. Like that's crazy.
Yeah. So let's see.
But it definitely, I definitely did see an article from Philadelphia that said it was Home Depot.
Mm-hmm. Definitely Home Depot. That's what it says. It says 326 Commerce Boulevard at 3:26 p.m. Commerce Boulevard at Home Depot.
3 p.m. is the witching hour, according to the spooks.
It's 3:30 a.m.
Listen, they didn't say it had to be 3:30 a.m. It could have been 3:30 p.m.
Oh my goodness.
Listen, 3:33. That's when the demons come out. 12 afternoon and in the morning.
But were the trees haunting Home Depot?
What times do kids get off of school? Because that is when the demons get out.
This is true. That makes a lot of sense now. God damn it. Anyway. It doesn't say if they thought the trees were haunting the Home Depot or what.
I mean, I could assume one would think if you think that everything has a spirit,
maybe
that everything is haunting everything.
Yeah, I guess maybe they wanted to release the spirits, the tree spirits.
But I mean,
from the
then my apartment has wooden floors. Are they haunting me?
Oh my God.
The walls are made of wood, aren't they? Inside, haunting me. Listen,
I'm sure this building is not made out of wood.
There's got to be something made out of wood in here. You think it's all
maybe
concrete?
The flooring, yeah, but that's about it.
Listen, the walls, sure enough, are not concrete because I can hear everything.
That's true.
Somebody's upstairs.
They're made out of paper.
Bink, bink. I can hear that hammer. So
your walls are made out of paper. So there you go.
Listen, I don't complain because I feel like if you live in an apartment, you just got to live with that stuff.
That's true. That's true.
You have not earned the right of privacy.
Two more things. It says close to 200 comments on the post.
Oh, geez.
Have begged for more details. They're not giving any more details about it. And then it says there's no indication the incident had anything to do with the price of lumber. So.
Wow.
And it says, according to reports, no charges have been filed at this time. So.
I just want to know what that looked like.
Same. I just want to.
And who was there working at Home Depot? And they turn the aisle, taking Paula and James who are redoing their bathroom into the hall, and there's just a bunch of people in capes.
I just want to see someone post a TikTok about it because I know there's one out there. There has to be a video of it out there. Home Depot employees, come on, help me out. I want to watch some video.
Well, did you see the original Facebook post? Because what it was a list of all of the criminal activity that happened on June 21st. So it was like, 12 a.m. They were looking for a juvenile who was out when they weren't supposed to be. Then 2:15, assault. 2:58, looking for the same people who assaulted people earlier.
Oh, God.
8:13 a.m., debris in the roadway. 8:23, suspicious person on this block. 8:36, Dollar Tree lot for a dog waste complaint. Also, is Lackawanna that free from crime that you call when you see poop?
It's great. I mean, it's great. It's up in Reading area. I'm not sure.
But yeah, then there was a traffic stop, welfare check on a person. And then all of a sudden it gets to 3:26. Disorderly people having an exorcism in the lumber aisle for dead trees. They were escorted out of the building. And what happened was somebody circled that and it got posted in my It Had to Be Pennsylvania group. And people were like, I don't even care about the rest of the day. Can someone please give us more details about this?
That's all I want. I want more details about this exorcism. I need to know what the... Oh my God.
You know what though? Someone literally says, why would someone call the police for dog poop in a parking lot? Someone says probably because somebody stepped in it when they were getting out of their car.
It was right next to where they got out of the car.
But who knows? Yeah, that's been the talk of Pennsylvania, which just lets you know what's going on in Pennsylvania.
Not much.
Nothing exciting. This is where we are, y'all.
Oh,
Pennsatucky is still Pennsatucky.
There you go. That's what I got this week. When Killers Get Caught is sponsored by the Magic Class Boutique. Now, why does that name sound so familiar? Well, it's because it's a business ran by our very own Brittany. That's right, the Magic Class Boutique is not only a black-owned business, it's a woman-owned as well. This is a jewelry company that makes some pretty awesome earrings, ranging from cute little sushis to spooky mermaid skeletons. There are even adorable self-defense keychains for those just-in-case moments. And introducing the Serial Collection. This set of earrings is based off of serial killers and the official merch for the podcast. This collection features everything a serial killer would need to pull off their crimes, from hunting knives at the beginning of their crimes to warden keys for when they eventually get caught. Check out themagicclasp.com today, where you can use our promo code CAUGHT to receive 15% off of your online order. That's themagicclasp.com and use promo code CAUGHT for 15% off. And make sure you tell Brittany that I sent you.
But for the killer I'm talking about this week, I have been generally trying to avoid what I call like the Big Ten in serial killers in our first year of doing this podcast. That's, Bundy, Ramirez, Dahmer, Rader, Ridgway, Gacy, Kemper, Berkowitz, Manson, Gein. And it's not just because I find them to be overdone, but there's actually such a sheer volume of sources to sift through and so many different opinions that I find it very overwhelming. And I would also like to be able to hire a researcher to help me with the work for those kind of big ones. But that said, I've been kind of fixated on one of the Big Ten.
Okay.
Who doesn't have that many murders under his belt. And it's a hotly debated topic of that, whether he's a serial killer or not, because of the number of kills. Who do you think I'm talking about?
I don't know. I'm thinking and racking my brain over here. I don't know. Tell me.
Well, I'll give you a hint. His story is the backstory for some very iconic horror movies. Psycho, Texas Chainsaw, Silence of the Lambs. So anybody else who's listening and probably banging your head on your car steering wheel.
Shut up.
It's Ed Gein. And So to appease some of our fans who keep wanting to know what my opinion on some of the Big Ten are, and also to satisfy my brain's need to like mull over him for the last couple of weeks, I decided that we were going to talk about Ed Gein. Like I said, he inspired Psycho because of the inappropriate relationship he had with his mother, Texas Chainsaw Massacre because of the whole wearing people's skin, and Silence of the Lambs because also the wearing people's skin.
Yeah.
I'm sure many of you listening know a lot about him, but I do hope you learn something new because this is going to be more, this is heavier into the people who raised him and his family long before he became the body snatcher that we know of, or the butcher of Plainfield. But yeah, a lot of this, or more what started me on the rabbit hole here, is a book called Deviant, The Shocking True Story of Ed Gein, the Original Psycho by Harold Schechter. And that's where I found a lot of the history of his family.
Okay.
So, before we talk about Edward Theodore Gein, or Gein, I don't know, it's a German name. Let's talk a little bit about the family he was born into and how I would say it almost seemed like his family started in tragedy. So we're talking 1879. George Gein is a little boy. He's only 3 years old. His family has a farm on Coon Valley, Wisconsin, which is about 15 miles outside of La Crosse, Wisconsin. George's mother, father, and older sister get into their horse-drawn carriage. They set out to go to town, and they all die.
Oh, wow. Sounds like JoJo.
The family got caught in a flash flood. JoJo borrows from a lot of history. But the family got caught in a flash flood while they were trying to cross the Mississippi River, which I didn't realize extends across all of America. And George was orphaned at 3 years old. He was taken in by his maternal grandparents who lived at a nearby farm. There aren't a whole lot of details about his life here, especially since it was the 1800s. Midwest orphans are actually really common in history back then because of how hard life was.
Yeah, okay.
Outside of his family dying when he was a child, he lived a very mundane and kind of normal early life. He went to elementary school. He began an apprenticeship at a local blacksmith. He did that in his 20s until he decided that country life wasn't really for him. And he moved to the nearest, bigger city. Another common aspect of both adolescence then and now. Mm-hmm. We all turn, 18 and want to, run away.
This is very true.
That's kind of what I did. I left here lived in Philadelphia for about a decade. But George got as far as La Crosse. He was a drifter who couldn't really keep a job. He sold insurance. He tried to apprentice as a carpenter. He worked at a tannery. He worked at the city power plant. He got a job working on the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railway back when there were just a couple of routes. Both of my sources mention that during this time, he picked up a mighty big drinking habit. Not just, but all of the sources reference the fact that when he moved to La Crosse, he picked up the bottle.
He liked to drink. He liked the sauce.
His general schedule was go to work, make his day rate, hit the saloon, spend it all.
I mean, he didn't have any other responsibilities.
Then he'd go home and feel kind of bad about himself. Which I gotta tell you, there's a song that popped up on my TikTok that was just why do I feel bad? You only sleep 4 hours a week. No, it can't be that. It's you only sleep 4 hours a night. And I was like, ugh, why is this person yelling at me on the internet?
Yeah, that'd be me.
It was he was I feel terrible. You eat terribly. And I was just buddy, no.
Stop calling me out. Damn.
Why is this so loud? But it probably wasn't helping his mental health and feelings.
Yeah, no. I mean, alcoholism.
Somehow during this time, he manages to find a woman. The woman that he would marry. Mm-hmm. And her name was Augusta. She's from a large family whose patriarch had emigrated here in 1970 from Germany. They settled in La Crosse immediately. And then George and Augusta met in 1899. George was 24 and Augusta was 19. And Augusta was described in so many different things as a thick-set, buxom woman with a face permanently fixed in a look of fierce determination and self-assurance.
So she was a boss. She had a boss looking face.
She was a thick lady with a boss attitude, apparently. And apparently George thought that was quite lovely.
I mean, who doesn't? I mean,
she was also very religious, though, extremely so.
Never mind.
And like she really thought the modern world was very immoral. She was raised on what her family called like old world values, and she did not like the looseness of the youth. And she was exactly like her dad, who was a very strict disciplinarian, who thought that their beliefs were the only way that one could be. Now, I haven't really described what George looked like, but he's described as being like a strong, simple man, reserved, dignified. He and Augusta were both Lutheran, and he absolutely hid his alcoholism from her.
Of course. I mean,
because that goes super against being religious. But George found her personality to be quite impressive. She always handled things. She had the family that he wished he'd always had. And Augusta had never really been sought after by men, so I think she was very flattered by the attention. And she felt that they shared the same values because they were Christian. They got married a few months later, on December 4th, 1899. And that's kind of the beginning of the end of that fairy tale.
That's it? Nothing?
Oh, it gets bad.
Oh.
The good part ends at that part.
That's
where they were both
part?
Pretending to be the best versions of themselves.
That's the good part. Oh, my God. Okay.
Well, Augusta realizes very quickly that she's connected to a man who is unreliable financially. And she isn't too happy with the drink. To try and keep the household running, she kind of leaned into her worst traits, becoming more like hard and more rigid and more intolerant. Because for her, she was like stuck with kind of like a worthless schmuck who couldn't keep a job and had no ambition. George responded to her behavior with withdrawing into himself and refusing to speak at all when he was home.
Oh.
Sometimes he'd come back from the bar. They'd get into a fight. He'd hit her. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure why they thought a child would fix their relationship.
A lot of people do.
But they decided they were going to do it. And so they had a baby boy, January 17th, 1902. His name is Henry. And Henry didn't have... Well, I'll say this early on. Henry didn't have a great life. And he died very, very young.
No.
But there were a lot of weird deaths around this family. And I'll get into those a little bit later. Augusta didn't feel all that close to her first child. And she figured it was because he was a boy. So she decided, she was like, I guess I'll just put up with sex with my husband until she gets pregnant a second time.
Oh, my God.
Thus giving birth to Edward Theodore Gein.
Another boy, though.
August 27th, 1906. And that was going to be the last one because she wasn't going to do this no more.
What? So you're just going to treat your kids just poorly? Well, your one kid...
You're about to be a mad dad. This episode, sir.
I hate this already. Okay.
So Augusta was pretty upset she didn't have a girl, but she decided, if I'm going to have two boys, I'm going to raise them to be better than their father and better than most men.
There you go. That's what you're supposed to do. But I guess it gets worse. It gets bad.
Well, George is struggling to find work after both boys are born. And Augusta is like, listen, both of my brothers are merchants. You could just become an entrepreneur. And like, I think as you and I both know, not everyone is cut out for that life.
See.
So she thought, though, that there was no way that he could ruin this because, like, he's working for himself. He makes money. He keeps the money. But he just didn't have the motivation for anything. And you can tell in the records because there's a La Crosse City directory. And in 1909, he is listed as the owner of a small grocery store at 914 Caledonia Street. And 2 years later, the owner is listed as Augusta Gein, and George has been demoted to clerk.
What the hell?
It's in the records.
How'd you go from owning your own grocery store to being just a freaking clerk?
Yep.
And your wife just took your business from you. She was like, fuck you.
She was like, listen, you're not going to do the work. What he did do was he worked as a clerk, but he also did a lot of butchery. He, when they got animals in, it was like a shed out behind the grocery store. And the boys were told never to go there. But Ed does have a memory of when he was fairly young, sneaking out back and being kind of shocked as hell
to see
like a carcass hanging from the ceiling.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
probably not a good idea for a little kid.
Not for kids. Damn, man, you got damn. Okay.
Yeah. So the first couple years of Eddie and Howard's life, it's okay. They're babies, so you can't really do too much with, like, they're little.
True.
But Augusta was very much a serious disciplinarian. And then around the time that Ed is 7, by the time he turns 7, she's completely the head of the household. 1913, she decides that the Gein family weren't going to be merchants anymore. And she sells that business so that they can become farmers. Because in her head, she was like, well, if we're landowners, that's some kind of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And she wanted to remove her children from the very wicked ways of the city. So they moved to a small dairy farm in the lowlands near Camp Douglas, which is about 40 miles east of La Crosse. But they only stay there for a year because Augusta, who's still trying to seek out wealth, finds a larger piece of land that she could afford. And they moved there in 1914, a 195-acre farm in Plainfield, known to the locals as the Old John Greenfield Place.
Damn.
This deed was 100% in her name. Unlike most families where the land was in the husband's name. Mm-hmm. And Augusta was, living her best life.
She didn't get him as cosigner or nothing like that? No little, like, tiny piece?
But it's also, like, massive at this point. Like, you got an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, a man who's not doing a whole lot, and a woman who's a couple, like...
Is he like a farmhand at least?
He helped around originally. And it was just massive for a 4-person family.
Right.
She didn't have to, like, chase after the boys to tell them to stop trying to watch the animals get butchered. But there were other, like, I would say, issues with having such a big property and also having small children doing the work there, but I'll get into that.
I mean, yeah, they probably get lost somewhere.
Yeah.
Ugh.
She decorated the house very chaste in terms of furnishings, and, like, the nicest things went into their parlor. And here's where, like, the issues come from. They were very isolated on this farm. Like, the closest, like, neighbors were, like, a good, like, mile away from their, like, main house. But for her children, this was awful. Like, she found the locals to be morally reprehensible. And she set about continuing to teach her children the whole, God, fire, brimstone. And she had a real, like, kind of haughty attitude about her farm and how she kept it really beautiful. And, like, she thought people were jealous of her. And the locals weren't particularly fond of her, but she didn't care. Like, for her sons were the only friends that she needed.
Oh.
Now, Augusta loved the idea of keeping her kids isolated, but she couldn't keep them 100% away from the ills of the world because they had to go to school. And so Edward started attending the Rocha Creek Grade School, which is a small schoolhouse that had 1 room and 12 kids. And then later that school merged with a larger school called the White School, and he was there from 8 years old to 16. And at that time, your formal education was pretty much over unless you wanted to go to college. As a student, he's capable, but kind of lackluster, kind of like his dad. Years later, after he was caught and his crimes went public, they put him under just a boatload of psychological tests and IQ tests and learned that he had an average IQ for people of the time. Ed was a really good reader, though, and like a lot of really quiet kids, he filled his time with books of all sorts, including some that were weird, and we'll talk about that later. Like I said, he was a really quiet kid. He didn't have a lot of friends. He spent his school time really lonely. He couldn't relate to his classmates who were all friends, and he wanted to be accepted, so he tried to imitate them, but it didn't really work. Every so often, he would, like, almost get there and, like, almost make a friend and be like, look, socialization. And he'd come home and he'd tell his mom, like, oh, I met this kid. And his mom would immediately squash it. She'd tell him that kid's family had a bad reputation, or that the mom was a woman of questionable moral fiber from before she got married.
You don't say it to kids.
Or there are rumors about that boy's father. And because Ed, like, adored her, he was like, okay. And he would go back to school and he wouldn't talk to that kid anymore.
Yeah.
So I will say this. While the other kids thought that he was weird, there were none of the big 3, serial killer ticks that we've learned about in the modern era. He never wet the bed. He never set fires. He never harmed animals when he was a child.
Any head injuries?
Mm-mm.
None. Huh.
There's absolutely nothing in his childhood that would show that he would suffer from such severe psychosis 40 years later.
That's interesting. Okay.
Maybe with the amount of understanding we have about these things now, like a gifted psychiatrist might have seen it, but he was just like a weird kid with a goofy grin and like a little lazy eye. He didn't know how to talk to people, and he laughed at weird jokes that he made to himself.
I mean, who doesn't?
He also stared at the girls in his classroom, but he never touched anybody or tried to do anything inappropriate.
Okay. I mean, wait, hold on a sec. So bedwetting is like a big...
yeah, that's one of the 3 things that they've determined is a sign of... it's not just bedwetting, but it's bedwetting well into the teenage years.
Okay.
Not like your kids like just potty training and having issues.
I was like...
And not like you are 21 and you drank too much and you forgot to get out of bed in the middle of the night. No, this is like it's consistent bedwetting well into you're a teenager.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. I was like... I'm not worried, but please explain more.
I'm done. I'm not worried. Are you worried about yourself, Brian? Is this going on here?
What? Yes, exactly. Well into my 30s, I'm still wetting the bed. Watch out for me, people. That's the age of serial killers.
One of the issues he had at school was that he was considered to be a bit effeminate in his mannerisms. He cried a lot. And, like, he couldn't take a joke. Like, any sort of teasing, he couldn't handle it. Like, one story that was referenced in Harold Schechter's book was that somebody, like, mentioned that he had a bag on his eye because he had this, like, skin tag that his mom never got cut off. And so, like, he just mentioned it, and, like, it was no, like, you know how, like, sometimes kids, like, someone says something, so somebody says something back to them. He didn't have that in him at all.
Yeah.
He just started sobbing. And they were just like, oh my God, like, what? What's wrong with him? And so for him, this, like, even the little bit of teasing that would happen, he was just like, oh, my mom's right. These people are horrible. So that's kind of like how he grew up. And during the years that Ed and Henry were in elementary school, the family was financially struggling. Augusta's purchase of this massive plot of land proved to be more difficult than she imagined. They were always worried if they had enough food to feed themselves. By the time that Ed was a teenager, his father had stopped working on the farm at all. And he just spent his time laying out, drinking, abusing both of his wife and children. When Ed and Henry were little, he would physically hit them. But by the time that they were teenagers, even though they were smaller than your average teen at the time, they were far too big to be hit. He wasn't trying to, get that smoke.
I was about to say, I just wanted to say, how are you, man, just laying around, doing nothing, and
you'd be surprised,
and you're abusing your family? How do you do that?
There are entire groups of men who specifically seek out women like myself who are a little on the bigger side so that they can live off of them because they're like, oh, well, she can't get anybody, so.
Fuck that shit. That's stupid.
And they try and live off of you.
And then, when they were teenagers, I bet he didn't want that smoke.
No, he didn't want that smoke once they got bigger.
Of course.
But what he would do is he would rant and rave and scream at them and insult them.
I'm like, what you gonna do?
And he still hit Augusta.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
You touch my mom again, I'm gonna give you the smoke.
Well, there's another weird thing that happened where apparently there was an argument that Ed remembered very vividly when he was being interviewed where his father accused Augusta of cheating on him, which is so out of her moral guideline. And besides that, she didn't have any time to cheat on anybody because she was working on the farm or cleaning the fucking house.
Working her ass off.
Yeah. But Augusta took the beatings and the physical and verbal abuse.
Well, you should have whooped his
because
ass.
God said divorce is wrong. And her thinking was if the Lord had saddled her with this man, then it was her burden.
Okay, but God never said you can't fight back.
Nah, that's the Bible don't say nothing.
He said you couldn't take it like a 2x4 against his head.
Ed didn't really handle his parents fighting like that. And he became more reclusive and more separate from his family. And I would feel like this is kind of one of the early places where there might have been a separation of reality for him, which is, we know now in hindsight, it's a PTSD thing. That sometimes people who are suffering from PTSD begin to lean into their fantasy world as a means to cope. Especially children who are abuse victims. Like, you find a happy place to go to when the bad thing is happening. And for him, it was these books that he was reading. And unfortunately, I remember being a quiet, smart kid who only read books all the time because of trauma.
Interesting.
So, but time passed. Ed and Henry become young men. George sinks deeper into his depression. Augusta takes to nagging the boys about everything, but especially the evils of the modern woman.
Of course.
Specifically that Plainfield women were the worst. And she knew, based on magazines and newspapers, that these girls were horrible because they wear short skirts and powdered their faces and there's lipstick. And she told her sons that all women were tainted. These new women were tainted and fallen.
Oh, Lord,
and
have
I just
mercy.
want to let you know that this is like the 1930s. So everything that any previous generation says about the next generation is always the same thing. It's never different. Every previous generation is like, oh, these children, they're going to bring down the downfall of civilization. Look at them and their inappropriate clothing. And I'm like,
that is what they say nowadays.
all the time.
Did you, interesting fact.
What?
I'm pretty sure you already knew this. Did you know that the human brain has not evolved since, like, in thousands of years?
That makes sense.
So we still have the same brain as our ancestors did, like, thousands of years ago.
But like Australopithecus? Or like, Homo sapiens?
I think it's...
Like, not the pre people, but like the human Homo sapiens.
Yeah, Homo sapiens.
Okay, I mean, so at least we've evolved from, Cro-Magnon.
Yeah, sort of. I'm just, like, because I'm thinking, so how people think they're smart now. People were the same amount of intelligence back then, and then people still do the same shit they did back then today.
Oh, of course, absolutely. Well, that's like okay. So I love this because I love the older Black folks who are always talking about how young, but look at them being all sexy, shaking their booties and all that, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But this is literally in my father's study right now. And it's a very famous painting that's easily like 80 years old. And it is a bunch of Black folks in like a jazz type club. Mm-hmm. And they are all just a swiveling and a shaking and booties are popped out. And I was like, how dare you tell me that people weren't twerking 80 years ago? They just always been twerking. It just had a different name then.
We really have been twerking.
Thank you.
Since we were in high school, we were twerking there too.
That's what I'm saying. Everybody talking about how these kids are up on new stuff.
Oh my God.
Ain't nothing new. It's just got a different name.
It does. Now we sound like old people. My God.
Anyway, though, that is what Augusta really harped on. Mm-hmm. And so this is actually another really awful story from the Schechter book. But so say they were working on the farm and it rained and they couldn't keep working. They would come inside and Augusta would be sitting in the parlor on her favorite chair and she would make them sit with her while she read Revelation.
Oh, God.
About the end of days and the loose women in the Bible.
Women are not at fault for any of that.
I believe the exact quote is harlots and abominations. Okay. And she would also just sit and read the Psalms to them. The Psalms are at least a little nicer.
I guess.
Revelation is just pure. The world is ending and you all suck and you're all going to die.
Well, so what? We all know this.
I mean, but, and so it was interesting because this is kind of a space where Henry and Ed begin to divide on the feelings about their mother. One day they're, I guess they're just talking and Henry's just like, well, we'll put it this way. Henry originally tries to kind of push back against his mother.
Mm-hmm. He's the oldest, of course.
He's trying to, flirt with girls. He's trying to do something, but his mother
He's like, I'm trying to do my own thing now.
His mother's a force to be reckoned with. And Henry decides he's just never going to get married. Which was fine for Augusta because several of her brothers never got married either. In fact, both Henry and Ed never had relationships with women in their entire lives.
Okay.
Now, for Henry, the shorter life is relatively young.
Yeah.
In fact, Ed's entire family dies within a 5-year period.
Oh, damn.
Mm-hmm. It starts with George. After a lifetime of abusing his liver and a marriage that had been pretty terrible for his mental health, he was pretty much like a shell of a person with little will to live. In 1937, he gets really sick. He's completely dependent on his family for absolutely all care. We didn't have a name for it then. From what it sounded like, though, is that he was probably suffering from liver failure. And liver failure is a pretty awful end.
Mm-hmm.
He died 66 years old, April 1st, 1940. And for his family, his death wasn't a major loss. Ed and Henry were like, whew, thank goodness. We don't have to take care of him all the time. It was just more chores on top of their other chores they had to do to keep that farm running.
Right, yeah.
Speaking of the farm, it's still not succeeding. And in fact, in the entire time, mind you, the family they moved there in 1914. It's now 1940. It still has no electricity, no indoor plumbing. So while it might have been like a hot commodity in 1914, Augusta hadn't been able to keep it up. They hadn't been able to save any money to improve the house.
What were they doing?
Just barely surviving.
Wow.
And the outside had fallen apart too, so it was not the house that it was when she started.
What year was this?
1940.
1940.
Mm-hmm.
Was this around like the Great Depression type of era?
Well,
oh,
a lot's about to happen.
Oh.
One of the worst wars in the world is happening simultaneously. Henry's too old for military service, but Ed is not. And so he goes to Milwaukee to... You're looking confused.
No. I'm scratching my beard. Sorry.
Okay. I was like, that the world war is happening.
Yes.
Okay. I was about to say.
I'm just Can I not stroke my beard? And my confused look is my look. Okay.
Okay then.
Everybody knows this. I always look confused.
But yeah, he goes to Milwaukee to get a health assessment to see if he can be drafted. And they determined that like eye growth that had never been removed had caused one of his eyes to sag, and it like partially impaired his vision. So they determined that he is not able to join the war in 1942. He's 36 years old at that point. And that trip to Milwaukee is the farthest he would ever travel from his home in his entire life.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. Oh, you know what? I was confused for a second. Because of the ages. I forgot that the years had jumped.
You thought he was still like 18?
Yeah, I was like, what are you talking about? He's not older. He's too old to be enlisted.
Well, yeah, that would have made, in 1942, that would have made his brother 38.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize that was the cutoff.
It's 35.
Honestly, I thought that, but Ed was 36. And they still were like, come on down.
Maybe it's not the cutoff anymore.
Well, it may be the cutoff now.
Yeah, I think it's 35 now. But okay, anyway.
But either way, after his dad died, they both of them took odd jobs, honestly. Ed was a handyman for a while. He was also a very well-respected babysitter in the town. Kids loved him. He'd roughhouse with the boys. He'd wrestle. He'd do magic tricks or tell scary stories to the little girls. In the winter, he'd join the kids in the snowball fights. He was still very self-conscious around adults, but with kids, he felt like they didn't judge him. And funny enough, like in town, the parents didn't judge him either. No adults did. They saw him as a good neighbor who was way better than his mom, who was the epitome of holier than thou. And they were like, well, Ed's not like that stuck-up bitch. So
we can talk to you, Ed. Say something to your mom for us, please.
Henry was working this like really good job as like a construction foreman. And the two shared chores. They hunted on the family property together. Ed really admired his brother. But it came up again that Henry thought that Ed was too close to Augusta. He was like, I think it's a little weird that she's like latched onto you like this. Ed thought Augusta was infallible.
Of course, that's your mama.
And then May 16th, 1944, there's a fire on some marshland near their home. And Henry dies under some suspicious circumstances.
Uh-oh.
He's only 43 years old. There are reports in old newspapers about how the fire started, and there's multiple ideas. There's reports that it was just an accident, that it was a fire that was like to burn off like the grass in the marshland.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, Ed reported to everybody that like while they were out there was a really strong wind and it blew and the fire got out of control. They decided they were going to try and like stop it from two sides. And then Ed loses track of Henry as he, is taking the fire out. When he can't find his brother, he goes to town, gathers a search party. They all go back into the woods and look for him, and there they find Henry face down in the dirt. Very, very, very dead. The searchers are confused, though, because even though the ground around him is scorched, Henry's body is not. He's covered in soot, but no part of him is burned. None of his clothes are burned off, nothing. They also found bruising on his head. Also, Ed had led the search party almost directly to the spot where Henry's body was, even though he had said he hadn't been able to find him.
See, look, I was thinking of ways to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he died from like smoke, and that's why he didn't have any burns. No, never mind. Okay.
Yep, you're absolutely correct.
But it looks like his brother kind of murdered him. He murked him.
Well, so they immediately call the district attorney, Earl Killeen, and the county coroner, George Blader, and a doctor from town named Dr. Ingersoll. They're all called to the scene. The medical staff determined he died from asphyxiation and there's no foul play. At the time, no one would have even suspected that Ed was the kind of person to kill anybody. And so the case was closed and they let it go.
Okay. I mean, but you did it, but it's okay.
Shortly after Henry's death, Augusta reports that she doesn't feel good. He puts her in the truck and drives her to the Walrose Hospital. By the time they get there, she's so weak that she needs a wheelchair to even get in the building. Augusta had a stroke and she needed to be hospitalized. And then when he brought her home, Ed was like her primary care person. Like he stayed with her every day when she was at the hospital, visiting hours. When we went home, he waited on her every need, reading to her from the Bible to make her happy. They actually got really close, and it was almost like he was like getting the attention from her that he always wanted.
Didn't he already get attention from her though?
No, because the attention he got from her before was, "You're going to hell and you're stupid. How could I raise such a stupid child?"
Really?
Yeah. Like she really loved him, but like it was I'm gonna beat you into submission kind of love.
Oh my God.
I'm going to make you a good man through aggression.
Okay.
Which is not good. So here she's being like soft because she's weak and she needs help doing things. And this is so great. Like it takes until about middle of 1945, almost like a year later, for his mother to get enough strength to try and walk. And like as soon as she could like move around on her own, she like flipped back to being normal. Like when she first tried to get out of like the bed, like he was like, "Here, let me help you," and she's like, "I know how to walk."
Oh,
like that kind of response. And he was like, "Damn it."
Back to business.
Yep. And then the winter of 1945, something pretty awful happens. They still had animals on their farm, so they needed straw to feed them. So they drive to a neighbor to make the purchase. And as they're driving down the road, they come across their neighbors who are a couple. Trigger warning, animal abuse. Just saying. The man who's their neighbor is like beating their dog in the middle of the street. And the woman's there screaming at him to stop. And the man literally kills
Oh my God.
the puppy in the middle of the road.
Oh my God.
And here's the weirdest part of this story. Augusta gets like super upset, like super worked up about it. But not about the animal abuse.
Why?
She's upset about the woman who's in the street sobbing because the two of them are living in sin.
Brittany.
I kid you not.
Brittany.
She works herself up into a fit and has a second stroke a week later.
Oh my fucking God.
This time he rushed her to the hospital. She dies December 29th, 1945. Like she literally like works herself into another brain hemorrhage.
Because you got mad.
She's mad because there's a slut down the road.
Come on.
I know. Some of her siblings attend this funeral. And my favorite part about this is that her obituary was 3 sentences long. George got at least like a couple of paragraphs. Like I could find it for you if I pulled up the book on archive.org. But like there was one part of like George Gein's where it was like George suffered incredibly long through the 3 years before his death. Here's what hers says. Mrs. Augusta Gein died at the Wild Rose Hospital on December 29th of cerebral brain hemorrhage. The body was brought to the Galt Funeral Home where services were held December 30th. Reverend C.H. Weiss officiating. She is survived by one son, Edward, who lives on the home farm southwest of here. I was like, they got back at her. They were like, listen, we not giving you any more lines than necessary.
Sorry.
Where's your funeral? You died, and you got one kid who lives around here somewhere.
That's all you need to know. Bye. Oh.
Ed was inconsolable.
Of course.
And this was definitely kind of the beginning of his spiral, but no one could really tell at first. He was still like very much soft-spoken, kind, awkward, not very social, but always polite. If anybody needed help, he would lend a hand. But some things were starting to break for him. He stopped shaving. He also stopped bathing. What little that was being done to the farm when Augusta was alive stopped. Front yard stayed overgrown with weeds for years. Ed sold off all the livestock to pay for his mother's funeral, and all of the old farming equipment was just left to rust in the barn. I'm like, you couldn't have sold that too, fam? Like,
goodness
wasteful.
Gracious. Yeah.
To make money, he leased a couple of acres on the property to neighbors, adjacent farms, who wanted more farmland, and he'd work around like town as a handyman. He didn't have a whole lot of like expenses, so he didn't need a whole lot of money.
Right. Yeah.
He was also getting a state subsidy for his land through this like state soil conservation program. Almost said conversation, and I spelled it right in my notes, but I almost said conversation. His neighbors were pretty understanding that he was grieving, and a lot of things fall to the wayside when you're grieving. But some people definitely thought he was kind of gross because, you know, here's this poor, unshaven,
I was about to say,
stinky man.
Scraggly looking, smelly dude walking down the street.
Most people weren't too bothered by him. The women around town, I wouldn't say they found him charming, but disarming, I would say.
Disarming?
Like, he wasn't really bothered. Like, maybe they took pity on him.
Okay.
He didn't curse at all. He never behaved violently. The men, their husbands, were kind of like, what kind of guy is this? Because apparently people found out that he was afraid of blood. So, which they found odd because his father had been a butcher in the grocery store, and he grew up on a farm, and he'd been hunting with his brother. But apparently, Henry must have done all of the skinning of the animal part.
Okay, there's nothing wrong with being afraid of blood. Okay,
are you afraid of blood, sir?
I just don't like looking at it.
Are you afraid of blood, sir?
I don't like looking at it. It's terrible.
I didn't know.
It makes you really lightheaded
when
you look at it.
We've watched a lot of things.
Okay, that's fake blood.
Oh, okay, so it's just real blood.
Yeah.
I only had one experience like that. When I worked in a hospital taking pictures of babies during college, I, sometimes bad things happen during pregnancy or after pregnancy. And so I was in one room, like, handing out, like, flyers to people and little booklets and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then in that moment, as I was pushing the cart out of the room, a hemorrhage happened. And I didn't know what that was. But I sure remember the sheer volume of blood.
I know
and the, like, team of 20 people who came tearing down the hall to help her. She survived.
That's good.
It was good. But it was scary. Like, that's the first time I'd ever seen blood, and it, like, made me nauseous. It was so much.
Yeah.
Scary.
I
One of my favorite content creators, that happened to his wife after their first son, and, like, he said he knew that something serious had happened because the doctor sent all of the interns away.
Oh.
She was like, I need y'all to leave.
Yeah.
And, like, he was just like, she was just...
That's the bad sign.
Yep. And, like, and her face changed. And he was just like, oh, no. And he has to be in the room and still, like, pretend that she's okay. Mm. Her mom's... The mom's holding the baby. Like, what's up? We good? We're having a good time? And halfway down, the doctor's on a whole different mission. Like, that's, like, one of the scary things that can happen. But, yeah. I didn't know you had that issue. See? Look at us knowing each other for so long, and I don't know you're weirded out by it. You're a blood person, though. It's your job. Is it okay when it's in the little bags?
It's okay when it's in the bags.
So what is this? Is it like a wound situation?
Like on me, I'm fine with it. Like I got my tip of my finger got cut off a while ago.
That's gross.
and like it grew back wrong. But,
I want to see when we're done.
Yeah, okay. It grew back wrong.
I never noticed that.
And like when I cut myself,
Mm-hmm.
and when it's bleeding, it's fucking a lot of blood. I'm just looking at it like, oh, okay.
What is the specific way that you don't like blood?
So
fam?
it's anybody else's blood.
Okay.
Like my kids, I'm fine with anybody else, like adult, and I can see they're like just their blood coming out. And it's like, ugh. And then with my job, there are sometimes, there are accidents with blood. With the
blood bag breaks.
If a bag breaks, or and then you just see all the blood everywhere. It's like, oh, I need to go.
Gross.
I need to go right now.
Oh.
Or I'm gonna throw up.
Well, you sympathize with Ed being afraid of blood then.
Yeah, absolutely, because that's just I feel weak in the weak in the knees.
We'll move on from that.
No, you're fine. Keep going.
Though nobody could tell, by the 1950s, Ed had retreated from society, and he was living in his head in a really dark way. He spent all of the hours in his farmhouse that, like, when he wasn't like going to work, just reading weird books. His house was covered in just filth, and he would spend like hours studying like Nazi Germany atrocities. He read stories of exhumations, resurrection men, body snatchers, stories of 19th century English grave robbers selling corpses to medical schools. I'm sure he probably read about H.H. Holmes. That was happening.
Oh yeah.
Another story of like these rich young British aristocrats digging up beautiful women, doing horrible things to them. He read about cannibalism, sexual mutilations.
He was just
and
all up on
when
this
he
stuff.
couldn't find those things to read, he would read the local paper, but not like to know what was going on, to read about people getting killed, car crashes, suicides, disappearances.
My boy.
He, like I told you, retreating into that fantasy space, he's entirely in it now. And he always tore out and saved the obituaries.
Of course.
So now we're going to get into kind of like what I would say the stuff. This is the general information that most people know about Ed Gein, which is that between 1947 and 1952, he began visiting graveyards at night. Just to look. He would tell the police later on that he visited 3 local cemeteries over 40 times. On 10 of those times, he dug up women who had recently been buried, who he thought looked like his dead mother, taking them home, mutilating their remains, turning them into trophies that he liked to display around his house. This was how Ed dealt with his feelings of lust for women. He swore to the police that he never had sex with any of them because they smelled bad.
You don't say.
But he did get a sexual satisfaction from peeling the skin from their bodies and wearing it.
That's not okay.
During this time, he also became obsessed with a story he read about a trans woman from Europe. And so he created a skin suit to see what it was like to feel like to have breasts. And he also cut off the genitals of several of the bodies that he pulled to see what a vagina looks like.
Sir, some of this stuff could be solved by getting a girlfriend.
He was too weird at that point to have a girlfriend.
Yeah, I know. He was too far gone to have a girl. I mean, you could find another, get a mortician girlfriend.
What?
I don't know. Somebody, get a grave digger girlfriend, okay?
No, so then they can both rub bodies together?
Look, you can get the hookup there.
It's still illegal and defiling corpses.
Oh my God, I'm trying to help him out.
Not good, sir. So during that time, that 1947 to 1952 time period, there was an uptick in missing persons in Wisconsin. A couple of them, there were about 5 that police just couldn't figure out. 4 different situations. The first was an 8-year-old girl named Georgia Weckler who disappeared on her way home from school May 1st, 1947. Okay. Hundreds of people searched for her. They searched the entirety of Jefferson, Wisconsin, but she was never seen or heard from again. There were no suspects, only tire marks found where she was last seen. They were the tire tread of a Ford. 6 years later, in La Crosse, Wisconsin, 15-year-old Evelyn Hartley is babysitting when she disappears. Her father tried to call her at the house that she was working at, and she didn't pick up the phone. So he showed up, and when he looked through the window, he saw one of his daughter's shoes and her glasses on the floor. So he checked around the house, and he found that the back basement window was open, and there was blood. He entered the house, saw signs of a struggle, and called the police from the property. The police found blood in the grass leading away from the house, and there was a bloody handprint on a neighbor's house. They did a regional search, and they couldn't find anything other than her bloody clothes near a highway that was leaving La Crosse. They assumed that she was murdered.
Mm-hmm.
November of 1952, 2 men stopped for drinks at a bar in Plainfield, Wisconsin before going deer hunting. They were Victor Travis and Ray Burgess, and they were never seen again. And then in the winter of 1954, a Plainfield bar owner named Mary Hogan went missing. Police found blood on the tavern floor that led to the parking lot and an empty bullet cartridge. The only common ties between all of these cases is that they all happened in or around Plainfield, Wisconsin. And I gotta tell you, Mary was German and tall and stocky and buxom.
Does she have like that boss?
Yep, she was a tavern owner, so she was, of course, she had to be
the boss.
Yeah,
face?
she had to be like, I mean, but she was very different from his mother in a sense that like she was like a swearing,
mm-hmm.
you know,
and she's a bar owner
kind of lady. Yeah. So this one is the direct, looks like his mom,
mm-hmm.
acts like his mom.
But he got 2 guys, you said, right?
There were 2 guys at a different bar.
Okay.
And we'll see about that.
Well, that's just changing his whole...
We'll see. Shh.
Okay.
So shortly after the police kind of gave up on the Mary Hogan case, a rumor pops up in Plainfield. A couple of teenage boys are like, Ed has shrunken heads in his house. And like, the thing is, like, some of those teenagers he had helped, he'd been babysitting, so he let them come to his house, even though it was like a total mess. It was like full of like rodent droppings and food on the floor and grossness. He still let them come over and they would like play cards. I guess there was a clean-ish room. And just like that, Ed is like, no one could come back to the house now after the rumors started popping up. At one point, though, I want to say like 56, he offered to swap houses with somebody, like for a smaller home. And the lady was like, well, it's 195 acres. That would be great. So she went to the house and like looked around, and I guess it had been semi cleaned up at that point. And, at one point she was like, oh, what's in that room? And he's like, that's just a storage area. Like, it's just a bunch of junk in there. You don't have to look at that. And so she was like, oh, is that where you keep your shrunken heads? And he was like, no, they're in the other room.
Oh.
He was being serious, though, but like nobody really, they were like, you're so funny, Ed. She ended up not like buying his house for her house. But that was another one of those weird situations where there were a lot of situations like that happened around town where like people would ask him questions and like they thought he was just joking, but he was very serious.
I'm telling the truth. No, I got heads. You want to see them?
November 16th, 1957. Local people discover that Bernice Warden is missing. She owned a hardware store in town, and residents said that the hardware store truck had been driven from the rear of the building at about 9:30 a.m. Her son was the deputy sheriff, and he visited the store at 5 and saw that the cash register was open and there was blood on the floor. And the last, this was the time period where people had to write receipts, and that was those 2 layers.
Yeah.
So the last receipt that had been written was for Ed Gein for antifreeze that he was supposed to come pick up the next morning.
Oh, you write their names and everything on it
too,
huh?
you write Ed Gein picking up antifreeze,
okay.
morning, whatever.
Okay.
So the following morning, the police don't wait and they go to the farmhouse to talk to Ed about the missing hardware store owner. And I guess he's somewhere on the property, but not immediate. So they just kind of walk in the house because they're like, it's the 1950s. We don't have rules.
You should have had rules.
Well, the farmhouse, when I say it was bad, junk, rotting garbage all over all the floors. They said the smell of decomposition and filth is all over the property. A local sheriff named Arthur Shelley inspected the kitchen, and he bumped into... Now, okay, some people say this was like a shed, and some people say this was the kitchen. So there are multiple sources that say, but regardless, he was looking around with his light, and he bumped into a carcass hanging from the beams in the beams.
Okay.
It had been decapitated, slit open, gutted. And at first, like, his brain was like, oh, yeah, whatever, deer. And then he was like, no, that's not a deer. That's the body of a person.
Uh-oh.
It was the body of Bernice Wharton, the mother of his coworker, Frank. Then more police came. They took Ed down to a police station to talk to him and took inventory of the items on the farm. And I have read this list once before on TikTok.
Yes.
I've truncated it somewhat. So while looking through his house, they find 4 noses, whole human bones, fragments, 9 masks made of human skin, bowls made from human skulls, 10 female heads with the top part of the skull shaved off, human skin covering several chairs, Mary Hogan's head in a paper bag, Bernice Wharton's head in a burlap sack, 9 vulvas in a shoebox, skulls on his bedpost, organs in the refrigerator, a pair of lips on a drawstring for the window shade in his room, a belt made from human nipples, a lampshade made from the skin of a human face, and of course the one that everybody knows the most, the corset made out of breasts, and he had a skin suit. It was a whole people suit.
Yes.
That he had put together over time. All these items were photographed, cataloged, and then reburied. You are welcome to look for them. This is one of the few things that I've found repulsive. Like the shoes.
Yeah, I've seen pictures.
They were like, it's just, because when I made that video, you were like, let me look at these. I did too. And I was like, oh, I shouldn't have looked. Like, I don't know. There were a pair of shoes and they just looked so bad. They were a pair of heels.
Yeah.
He must have stolen them from like a dead body and like covered them in flesh. It was awful.
That's exactly what he did.
But the bigger question was to find out, like, how did you get these? The police began this major excavation of the property to make sure there weren't any bodies buried on top of what they found in the house. He's being interviewed at Watauga County Jailhouse by investigators. He doesn't talk for the first day. And then after a whole day of silence, he's like, okay, I killed Mrs. Wharton. And then he says, I found the rest of the bodies at the local cemetery. Well, the problem with that is Mary Hogan's head is in a paper bag, and you definitely didn't find her in the cemetery.
No, you did not.
So they're like, there's more interrogation there. And so finally he says he killed Mary Hogan too. He said he didn't remember doing it, but he accidentally shot her. And that sometimes he would just like leave his house in the middle of the night and he was in like a trance and he would just go to the cemetery. Throughout the entire investigation though, he showed almost no sign of remorse or any emotion actually. Like everything was always factual and to the point. Sometimes he even like smiled when he was telling people all the stuff he did. He had no real understanding of how these crimes were affecting his community or the entire country for that matter. As for prepping for a trial, the courts immediately submitted him to a lot of doctors for tests. Psychologists and psychiatrists immediately said that he was a sexual psychopath due to his extremely unhealthy relationship between him and his mother and his very confusing feelings about sex and sexuality that his mother kind of beat into him. Through that, he had learned to sort of love and hate women, and this was his way of dealing with that. After a really big court battle, actually, because the police were like, there's no way for us to tell that these came from the places where he said unless we exhume the cemetery spots that he told us to.
Right.
So there was a fight over whether they should even do that. And so they eventually did manage to get that exhumation order. And when they dug up the graves, the coffins did show signs of tampering. And a lot of the coffins showed sections of bodies removed.
Okay.
As for the city of Plainfield, the town is besieged by fans, people trying to get a glimpse of the Gein property, reporters trying to get a story, psychiatrists and psychologists trying to talk to Ed, showing up at the precinct. Thousands of people are showing up. And the company that was handling the sale of the estate like talked about how they were going to charge 50 cents for people to see the house, and the townspeople were like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
That didn't happen, but it didn't matter anyway, because on March 20th, 1958, the Plainfield Volunteer Fire Department got a phone call that the Gein house was on fire.
There you go.
It very quickly burned to the ground before anyone could get there. Police assumed arson because the house had no electricity. And despite they tried to do a very like thorough investigation, nobody was ever charged because there was nothing.
Did they though?
Well, I found nothing to say that different of the sort.
Uh-huh.
The Gein farm equipment though was auctioned off, and so was the car. That sold for $760, which is about $7,000 in today's money.
Mm-hmm.
It was put on the county fair circuit as the ghoul car.
Oh, God.
Because Ed had used it to haul the dead bodies. As for Ed's fate, after he spent 10 years in a mental health facility, the court decided he was cognizant enough to stand trial. And the proceedings for that started January 22nd, 1968, but the full trial didn't start until November 7th, 1968. The main testimony was from lab technicians and the sheriff and the deputy sheriff, and he was found guilty, but the problem was he was deemed that he was sane when the crime happened, so ultimately they sent him back to the facility where he spent the rest of his life. He was a model patient, and actually every single doctor interviewed post who dealt with him said that he was almost docile. It was wild. They were like, we don't understand how this person did this stuff. Right. He shows no signs of anything. He is just bleh. Yeah. But I'm also assuming he was probably heavily medicated at that point too. He died of respiratory failure, 77 years old, on July 26, 1984, and he was buried with a gravestone. But because true crime folks are awful,
of course,
they began breaking pieces off of it. And if you look at I found a picture of it, it had chunks missing. And then finally somebody stole the grave marker in 2000. So now he's buried in an unmarked grave between his parents and his brother. So you'd have to look up county records to find out where his parents and his brother are buried to be able to find out where he's been buried.
Damn, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
And you're talking about him being a grave robber. You guys are robbing stuff from his grave.
Right? And what's that word?
Popcorn and kettle black?
Maybe popcorn. Not ironic. That's like a...
That is irony.
Morissette ironic.
That is irony.
Is it really ironic?
It's kind of ironic.
Or is it a traffic jam when you're already late?
Shut up.
But anyway, that's the end for me. Yeah. I always knew what Ed Gein did, but I didn't know the full scope of the familial relationship, which is what I'd been thinking about and reading about.
I didn't know any of that backstory at all.
So there we go.
I just knew about the
body parts.
Yeah, the body parts inside this little lamb stuff. And I was like, oh, that's disgusting.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder if he ever knew that there were all these movies that were made based on his debauchery.
Maybe he's in hell just looking up and saying, huh, interesting. You guys are all fucked up. All right, so I have been trying to honor some requests I've been getting. We just got an email. We just got an email last week from somebody. And, it pays.
Oh, yeah.
It pays off to whine on the podcast. Is what I gotta say. It pays off.
I should say her name.
Being salty. I think it's Caddy.
Yeah, it was Katie or Caddy. Caty.
Yeah,
won't say her last name.
Katie.
But she's the first person who used our official website's
an email option.
Send us a message.
Yeah. It's I do appreciate your email. And I will cover one of those two stories that you sent me at a later date.
Spooky stories about Georgia.
Yeah.
But yay, thanks for sending us a message.
Yeah, I do appreciate it. The reason why I'm not covering any of those other two Georgia stories is because I was already covering a Georgia story this week. I know.
I almost picked a Georgian serial killer to be on brand, but I don't know. Wisconsin was just in my mind this past week.
Yeah.
These past couple weeks.
Wisconsin.
So I was like, never mind.
Wisconsin.
No. Bad. Smack your hand, sir.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, I got so before, like when we first started the podcast, I was telling one of my coworkers about it. Brittany knows who I'm talking about. It's one guy who works on the weekends. He probably never listens to the podcast. You know who I'm talking about. That look on your face. Yeah, that one that Brittany does not like at all.
Listen, when it comes to work, you just need people to be there and do their jobs, okay? If you are there and you do your job, I like you.
But if you
are not there, or you don't show up, or you call out randomly, and then a certain someone sitting across from me at the podcast table has to, handle that and work a 14-hour shift, then I'm not your biggest fan.
She's not your biggest fan. I don't think he listens to the podcast, but I don't fucking care.
If he does, you're gonna have an awkward day one day.
It's probably gonna be like one Friday. He's probably gonna come into work and actually be in the building and be like, "I heard your podcast last week." I'm like, yeah, then
I heard one of your podcast from several months ago. You don't like me?
Oh no, dude! Like you're okay. Like you're a cool dude, but work.
Just to ask him to call me. I don't like you, and I'll tell you.
Anyway, he did suggest me to cover this interesting story.
Oh. Well, look at that.
In Georgia, that I'm about to regale to you folks.
I'm here. What is it? Let's go.
So, like I said, today we'll be heading to Georgia, where the peach emoji lives.
Sir. Can't stand you.
This is a fun time today.
This is why I pick things that frustrate you.
This is why I pick things that annoy you.
Okay, then. This is what
I
we're
say
doing.
things that annoy you. It's payback. Now, I don't know much about, the state, Georgia.
My great-grandma was from there.
I never lived in Georgia. I visited there.
I hear Macon's terrible, though.
Oh, I heard a lot of places are terrible, actually.
Doesn't everybody feel that way about their hometown, though?
This is true.
I've never met somebody who was like, wow, I just really love where I grew up. Everybody's always, like, super mad.
Like, how dare I grow up here? But, yeah, it's not a bad place to visit sometimes.
Oh, right, you drove down there one time.
Yeah,
right?
I drive through there sometimes to go to Florida. That night, I think the last time it took me about 17 hours to get down there.
Bless your heart.
So anyway.
That sounds awful.
Have you heard of Lake Lanier? It's
drawing a blank right now?
You have not. Well, that's surprising. Apparently it's been all over TikTok, and I'll explain that later. I'll explain that later. Yeah. But Lake Lanier, I'm sure most people who are listening, or some people who are listening who know about spooky stuff, know Lake Lanier. It's a pretty cool place to visit. But, it wasn't a lake, like most lakes. It was actually a man-made lake.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you some backstory on the lake.
Okay.
So Lake Lanier is Georgia's largest lake.
Okay.
And it was made after the construction of the Beaufort Dam. So this is one of two bodies of water that are named after a Georgia-born poet. His name's Sidney Lanier.
Okay.
Sidney Lanier. He was born in 1842. He wasn't only a poet. He was a musician, an author, and he served for the Confederate in the Army.
Okay.
The Civil War,
Not entirely excited about him.
The Civil War. So how how people.
We're not fans of the Confederacy here.
We're really not. Sorry. But apparently he was even a lawyer. So apparently this guy was the shit.
Okay.
In his time. In his time.
Ain't shit now.
And no, not at all. In his time and in that area. Stupid. Oh my god.
I'm sorry, y'all.
Okay, so anyway. So how did the lake come to be? Well, like I mentioned before, it was a man-made lake, made as a result of a dam being built. Now the lake was finished in 1956. Okay. But it was set to be made before that. I think in 1946. So like 10 years earlier, the government had commissioned the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to construct a dam. Now, what was the reason for this dam? Well, it was for controlling flooding, to help provide a water source for the Atlanta and around that area, surrounding area, and it was used to help the power homes as well. So they use hydroelectricity.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's very awesome. I like just like
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah,
we could talk about how many people died during the creation of the Hoover Dam.
Oh my God,
a lot.
We're going to be talking about people dying, all right?
Oh.
So yeah, the U.S., like I said, the U.S. government, they tasked the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers with building Lake Lanier in conjunction with the Beaufort Dam.
This is really throwing me for a loop. Why don't I know anything about what you're talking about?
I don't know. I just heard about it this year too. So
okay,
there you go.
See.
So this was almost a $45 million. Yeah, they had a $45 million budget for this creation of the dam.
When?
And
what time period was this?
It was about 1950s.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is. I don't even want to know how much it is now. I don't want to know.
$1 billion.
So why do they need this much money to make a lake and a dam?
How big is it?
It's pretty big. I didn't write down the specifics. I'm terrible at research. I'm just going to say that.
Brian cares more about the spook and the story aspect than the background research.
I do not.
But the best part about that is that you ask me things that I don't think to look up. You're like, well, how big is this forest in Australia? And I'm like, oh, buddy,
I did ask you that.
It's like huge, man. Big.
This lake is the biggest in Georgia. That's all that's all I know about it.
Okay.
So they needed this much money because they had to buy land.
Oh, right. What do we call that again? When Americans just take people's land?
Oh, what is that called? What is that?
They did to the indigenous people. Oh, what's it called again?
Appropriate? No.
Nope. It'll come to me randomly.
Yeah. I'm drawing a blank on that.
Things.
Goodness gracious, what is that called?
Something destiny, something.
Oh, manifest destiny.
Manifest
Destiny. There you go.
This is like one step above manifest destiny.
Mm-hmm. Because you get money from it.
They pay, but they still treat you like garbage.
Basically, we'll get into that later as well.
Bet you it was Poe people too.
So, like I said, they had to buy land, but the problem was that there were already towns and people living here. There were farms and stuff.
Towns?
Towns. There were towns, and this was like a whole area that they had to buy.
It's got to be pretty big then.
I do have how many? 56,000 acres of land. That's how much they had to buy.
Massive. That's not a lake. That's like a little baby ocean.
That's 56,000 acres of land.
Oh my gosh.
They had to buy. So not only did they have people's farms and they had businesses there, they had churches there, they had a cemetery there, and people had their own personal family cemeteries there
cemeteries. Too. What do you do about that? I mean, okay, there have been situations locally around here, from what I understand, about cemeteries that were. Okay, so what they were supposed to do was move people. It happened in Philadelphia, outside of Philadelphia. But instead, what they ended up doing was just building on top of it. And then, decades later, finding out that there were still, dozens of graves underneath houses in town.
This sounds like poltergeist.
I think this is kind of where that was probably where the concept of poltergeist came from, because it was really common.
Yeah.
They're like, it's so much work to move all these gravestones. What if we just move all these graves? What if we just move the gravestones and nobody will know?
That is definitely poltergeist. My God.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize that, and I don't know why I never made that reference, but like I definitely remember hearing about that about a cemetery that was like on the outskirts of Philadelphia, and then as Philadelphia got bigger, they needed to move it, and they just didn't. And then like we're talking years and years later, they found like old stuff from back then. And then also when I was living there, they found underneath like Center City the old like foundations,
old Philadelphia,
to slave houses.
Oh no,
that were owned by good old Ben Franklin.
Of fucking course, Ben Franklin, you douchebag. Anyway.
And they actually, what they did was they like didn't move them or anything. They just put like a nice plexiglass spot above it and like a little place for people could look in. I don't know if it's still there. It was there years ago, but like they didn't want to move it. They were like, this is historical Philadelphia. Like,
you know why I think he's a douchebag?
Why?
Daylight saving time. Daylight saving time.
Why do we do that?
We still do it.
It's weird.
No reason. No reason for us to keep doing that. Like back then, okay, cool. Nowadays, fuck no. We don't need that.
I guess it's some tradition.
Now I get the sun that's still up at like, what time is it now?
8:30.
It's 8:30. The sun's still up.
I like the sun up at 8:30.
Oh no, okay, this is cool. I mean,
I don't like when it flips in wintertime.
That's what we're talking about. I'm talking about the flipping.
It's like dark at like 5.
Yes.
Because then I like leave in the morning and it's dark, and I come home and it's dark.
Yes.
And I'm just a person of the dark.
That's what I don't like, is when it flips. Now this time it's awesome. I like summertime for that because the sun's still up. But any other time, like,
well, yeah. So that's interesting. Finding like, so did they do it the right way?
So
Brian, did they do it the right way?
So they paid to have these bodies moved.
Okay.
I'm not sure about all of the personal family graves. We'll get into that later.
That just sounds bad.
So now the buying started. Buying land started with an 81-year-old. His name was Henry Shadburn.
Y'all better be nice to Henry.
Yeah, he sold his land for $4,100.
That's good money.
Or $4,100. Yeah, that's not bad.
Could buy another house for that.
Yeah, exactly. Now, do you think all of the buying of the land, went this smoothly?
Of course not.
No, of course not. Of course not. A lot of people were like, fuck this. Like, my great-great-great-grandpa left me this land, and I'll be damned if I'm going to sell it.
I can be honest, though. Like, my parents have a house.
Yeah.
And, like, if somebody was like, listen, we're just going to raise that entire area and make a giant park near the river, I'd be like, what you selling for?
Yeah.
If somebody offered me like millions of dollars, I'd just buy more land somewhere else.
Exactly.
I'm not fighting with the government, because then what they do is they manifest destiny and you get nothing.
Exactly.
Because they go like, listen, everybody in your community is sold except for you.
We're
just gonna take it now.
What is it? It's like from Up in the beginning.
Yeah. You're stopping like community development or growth or whatever.
Yeah. So they're building around your small tiny house. Oh my God.
Yeah, so I would just do it.
So
I understand it, but I understand people wanting to fight for their ancestral homes and lands, but I don't have it in me to fight the U.S. government. Sorry, y'all. I'm not a freedom fighter.
I think I wrote that in here somewhere, that like if someone offered me enough, then I'd fucking take it. Like, I'm sorry, my ancestors would be proud of me for making that much money.
That's what I'm saying. I could just listen. We about to have a new ancestral
Oh
home
my God, hell yeah,
for future generations. They'd be like, what? You had that little, like, half an acre, and now you got 20? Upgrade you.
There you go. Thank you for grandpa for leaving me this land so I could sell it and then upgrade my land.
Thank you. But I understand.
Yeah. So some refused to leave their homes, of course, and some even filed civil action suits against the government.
As happens.
So I wrote this as a side note. They had to move. It was 250 families that needed to be relocated and rehomed.
Okay.
I forget how many businesses. There were like 17 businesses, I think. Around that much.
It's a whole town. That's a whole friggin' town.
Yeah. So some people were even removed from their land by force.
I knew it.
And their land seized.
Dang it.
For the people who said their land, who sold their land, they hadn't seen that kind of money before, so they were just like,
yeah, do it.
I can buy better land for less money somewhere.
Right?
Oh, that's where I wrote my grandparents, my ancestors would be proud of me. That's where I wrote
agree.
that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Either way, they cleared all the land of people and started filling the area with water. Now, of course, any building that was made out of wood, of course, since it would float by the water.
Wait a second.
Hold on. What?
They just started filling it? They didn't move the stuff?
No. They
That'd be that reminds me of Moreau from Resident Evil 8, that whole town that was underwater.
No, they deconstructed all of that, all the wood buildings. Anything made out of concrete, they did keep down in the water. So they filled around it. So there's still like buildings down there that were made out of concrete and stone and shit.
Do we have an Atlantis at the bottom of Rainier?
It's an underwater town.
Weird.
Or area. City,
weird.
Whatever you want to call it.
That's super weird.
Yeah. Where's that? Okay, March 1st, 1950. They began the construction of the dam, and it took 6 years for them to complete the dam. And after that, 1956 is when it's the year that they started filling up the area with water. They filled the valleys, and it took about 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
For them to fill. So after that, it's full. You got a lake now. Yay! Right?
Where no one is living around it. Can I build some land around the lake or?
Probably not. I don't think so.
Okay. So
it wasn't made for people to live around. It's just made for like
industrial.
Exactly.
So it's not even a pretty place. Like I'd be like, okay, you paid me this money for my land. Can I have like a beachfront property?
Actually, a lot of people visit there like every year. A lot of people visit there, but it's not like it's not supposed to be.
Here's what has to happen. As soon as you leave, I'm going to Google and see if people have done deep sea diving in Lake Rainier.
They have.
To look at these property, like these stuff underground.
They have. They really have.
That sounds super interesting.
The pictures,
I'm terrified of deep sea diving myself because of the idea of seeing corpse bodies underwater.
Yeah.
But
underwater pictures like that, like of the old buildings and stuff, yeah, like it's pretty cool looking.
You can't convince me to put on another one of those breathing apparatuses.
I'm not going to do that.
I did it once. Never again.
So we're going to get into the spooky section of the.
This is a lot of interesting history, honestly.
Yeah. So this is the curse of Lake Lanier.
Turn it up for week 23.
Yeah. So from 1998 to 2018, there were 57 boating fatalities that took place, and 100.
I thought people weren't supposed to go there to like goof off.
I told you they like the government says it's not a tourist place. You're not supposed to go there. People just visit.
Oh, okay.
They just like they have a whole. Oh, you should see
but
pictures.
Is it like Lake Michigan bad?
I'm not sure.
Because was it Lake Superior? Lake Superior is the one that's like so cold that if you dispose a body of it there, it won't float to the surface because it'll never grow the bacteria needed to float.
No, it's not like that.
Not that bad? Okay.
It's not like, because it's in Georgia, so.
Yeah, true. Georgia is a little warmer than up north.
It's the state above Florida, so yeah, it's always going to be fucking warm. They don't know what snow is.
Warm. Yeah, like remember that one year that it snowed in Atlanta and there was like this much snow and people abandoned their cars on the road?
It was like 2 inches of snow. I'm sorry, Georgia people. We don't laugh at you.
They were terrified.
We don't laugh at you because like those kind
laughs in us getting like 3 feet in one day this year, and I still had to go to school and work.
Oh my god!
My boss had to come pick me up in his firefighter truck. That's how bad the snow was.
But like places like in Georgia or Texas, like Texas this year, they had that snowstorm. It was like, oh, that was terrible.
Yeah, the one where everything was freezing and people were dying.
Yeah, it fucking terrible. And like places like that, they don't have like the stuff set up like us up north do
you're
for
right.
like
That's
snow.
True.
It's like we probably don't have a lot of.
Well, when the power went out that one time, remember when we were kids?
Yeah.
And like it was that Eastern Seaboard. I feel like we were children when that happened. How old was I when it happened?
I don't know.
I'm not going to ask. I was the children. We're just going to
we were children.
We were children when the Eastern Seaboard went out of power.
There you go. Oh, goodness.
Okay.
So, Oh, 145 people drowned between that.
Okay, in the last like 50 years. Okay. I feel like it's probably worse at the beach, but then again, you ain't supposed to be here.
Hold on, I didn't even get to the big numbers yet.
Nobody's supposed to be here.
2015, 2018, there were 43 lake-related deaths and 128 boating accidents. Not fatalities, but just accidents.
Accidents. Okay. Well, at least people didn't die.
So there are an unusually high amount of deaths from the lake. There are an estimated amount of 675 deaths
Per year?
No, since the lake was completed. So since
okay.
19,
that's unusually high.
I think.
I assumed wherever there was water, people were doing stupid stuff and dying.
Yeah, but probably not as much as this.
Okay.
So is this lake haunted or cursed? So there have been reports of people just standing, and they could be standing like at the shore, and then they can take a step, and then they just fucking like it. That's how dangerous this lake is. Oh,
I've been in stuff like I find that very unsettling.
Yeah, like
I've been to coastal beaches, even on the East Coast, where you can see where the drop off is from the beach. Like you can see there's like a couple feet of like safety, and then all of a sudden it just drop, and it's not even like it's dropping down 30 feet. No, but it's enough for me to be feel very uncomfortable.
Yes,
yeah. Like I need to be able to touch down with ease.
Yeah, this is a man-made lake. It wasn't.
Well, that makes sense too, because like I'm sure it's probably like the erosion over time. I don't know. Something just freaks me out because all I think about is like how there was Pangea and how the all the stuff fit together at one point, and that there's little lines of like out where that just drops off into like hundreds of feet deep.
Yeah,
and that just frightens the crap out of me.
Oh, you're telling. So, since it's built over, like the lake is built over or above, whatever, it's built. There are churches underneath of it. Underneath the lake, and there's like I said, cemeteries. Old
churches were always stone. You're right. Forgot all about that.
Churches, cemeteries, like a cemetery, and then there are personal cemeteries. And like I said before,
we don't know whether they actually removed all those bodies.
The personal ones. We don't know if all those bodies were removed. I don't even know if the main cemetery, all those bodies were removed either. So people were just swimming in this lake full of dead fucking bodies.
I mean, but we've talked about that in the past.
Yeah, this is true.
All bodies of water that are not pools are places where there are dead bodies.
But this is a lake, though.
Like, have you been in the Atlantic Ocean?
Of course.
That's where the Titanic sunk.
I know there are dead bodies there. I know there are dead bodies everywhere. I'm just saying. Like, this is a lake. It's smaller of a smaller body of water.
Like 50,000 acres or whatever you said earlier.
56.
I forget. See, there we go. I was close. That's a lot of acres of water.
Yeah.
I would love to know how many gallons of water, and I'm going to Google that later.
But you know what happens when you build over or you desecrate some burial grounds.
Oh, I sure do know. That's my favorite part of watching those shows.
Boom. Haunted.
When somebody's like, yeah, I've been seeing this weird, like, 2-story figure just walking around outside my house. It's really creepy. And the lady's like, yeah, that's definitely like an ancient being that is stalking this land, and it was brought here to protect the land from the white people. Yeah, so during the time periods when the indigenous folks were fighting against the white people. You should probably just leave.
Yeah, because you're white people, so go.
There you go. Listen, if anybody like actual like medium I respected was like, you should just go.
Yeah,
I'd be like, all right then, all right fam.
All right, yeah, say less. I'll put it up for sale tonight.
We good.
So cars,
especially in this economy, get that sold in like a week. Now is not the time to buy a house, folks.
So apparently there's a bridge over the lake or by the lake. Never. So cars mysteriously fall into the lake.
How?
Fall off the bridge into the lake. I have no idea. There are mysteriously, like I said, drownings. Like people can just be standing in knee-high water and then just drop the fuck off to nothingness. And yeah,
I just want to see the bridge. That's what I'm looking for, the picture right now.
So I'm gonna tell you the story.
Is it Lanier?
Yeah.
I've been hearing Rainier the whole night.
Lanier.
My bad. I spelled it wrong too in Google and everything. It's like 3-star. Ooh, okay, it's cute.
Oh my god!
Lanier Islands.
Yeah.
Houseway.
I don't know. You gotta look at it. You gotta look at like I had some maps pulled up, like of the whole area.
No way.
It's pretty crazy.
I'm literally looking at a picture of gravestones underwater.
Mm-hmm. Pretty fucking crazy.
That's so disrespectful.
So, I'm gonna tell you the story.
Okay,
of
I'm
a
ready.
case of a car going off of the bridge.
I'm looking at the bridges right now, actually.
Okay, in 1958,
Mm-hmm.
the lake is almost done. Like I said, it took 3 years from 1956.
This also doesn't make any logical sense. It's massive. It's not.
Yeah.
When I think of a lake, I think of like a big circular entity.
Yeah,
This is weird and has branching paths.
it's a man-made lake.
When I think of a man-made lake, I don't.
You don't think it. You think of it being like a uniform type of thing.
Yeah, this
But-
actually looks very natural. I would assume
Yeah.
this was real.
It probably changed over the years.
True, you're right. Over the last 50 years, nature takes itself back when it wants to.
This is true.
You're right.
No,
Okay,
that-
but Les, what happened to the car that just fell in the water? I'm
Okay,
here.
1958. The lake is almost done
Raft
being filled.
attention.
2 young women. It's Delia Mae Parker Young and Susie Roberts. They were crossing over Lanier Bridge when for some odd reason, they lose control of the car and end up in the lake.
Okay. Did they survive?
No, they did not.
Oh, dang it.
So search teams failed to find remains from either of these women, and they failed to find the vehicle they were driving.
Oh, okay.
The only indication of any of this happening was skid marks from the car.
And then somebody was like, yo, Susie, where you at? We've been waiting for you.
Yeah, they didn't make it home
we had
that
a
night.
party and everything.
So, 1959, a year later, a fisherman finds a body floating in the lake, but no one could identify this person.
That's because of bloat
And
decomposition.
but they had noted that this body had no hands and was missing some toes.
Are there animals in this lake?
I'm not sure, probably.
Probably. They
Probably
often
fish.
sometimes when we build our
A
own
year though?
we build our own ecosystems, we will do that.
Would it be a year? Would it take a year for that to happen? Like for an animal to eat your hands off, like
Oh,
a fish?
easier than weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh?
Like I said, nature claims our bodies rather fast. I mean, depending on how cold the water is, too.
Okay.
Um,
So, in 1990, about almost 30 years later, the lake is dredged up in preparation for new pillars for the bridge, where
they found it.
where they find a rusty car,
Nice.
the same one Delia and Susie were driving.
Don't haunt me, Delia and Susie. It's just very interesting.
So,
I'm sorry, I'm so interested.
on closer inspection, they find the remains of Susie Roberts, and who, her bones were in the car.
So she couldn't get out before she drowned?
Right. So leading officials to believe that the no-handed body was of Delia.
My issue with that is, all of the body should have been bitten, nommed on.
Mm-hmm.
Only no hands?
Only no hands and some toes were missing.
No hands feels like a mob hit almost.
This was,
No hands, no teeth is a mob hit.
This is, as soon as I saw that the body had no hands and no fingers or no toes, I was like, where was this at? Georgia? This could this be like a racial thing, maybe?
I don't know.
That's what I was thinking.
Like, and we're
first.
saying like, oh, but if they were by
was
themselves
a-
and somebody ran them off the road,
Yeah, that's true. Maybe. I don't know.
conspiracies.
Here we go. So, after that, there have been apparition sightings of a woman wearing a blue dress walking up and down the bridge. She's been seen having no hands
Ah,
at all. And apparently Susie's apparition can be seen wandering the back roads of Route 53.
which heads across the bridge.
Yep.
Oh, Susie, poor girl.
So
You know, this means I'm going to have to go through like every season of Ghost Hunters to see if they went down there.
they probably did. You know they fucking did.
And Ghost Adventures, all of them. I got to go see who's been down there.
Zach's been
Have
down
I
there.
already watched this and I didn't remember?
Probably.
I have so many ghost shows in my brain that I clearly may have forgotten. But like, this seems too interesting for me to have never heard of it before.
So I'm going to step away from the ghost, the paranormal stuff for a second.
Okay.
And give you a little bit of different history. So I had finished my research, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to Tara today about it,
Mm-hmm.
and I was telling her, what I was covering, and she's like, "Oh, I've heard about that," and I'm like, "Okay, cool," and she's like, "Yeah, it's been all over TikTok," and I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Whoop.
And
The irony that the one thing you searched suddenly went viral on TikTok?
yeah, I know. Yeah, she's like, yeah, a lot of people talking about it and how there was a racial cleansing that happened, and that's why it's haunted.
Was this a sundown town?
This was a sundown county.
Yep. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's why some folks didn't get no money.
So me being me, I got to look into it. So I did this before I came over.
No, it's all the I mean, the majority of sundown towns were actually in the north, but there were definitely enough in the south.
Yeah.
That's the thing I like to remind people when they're like, the north was against slavery and blah blah blah. I'm like
no.
the north had towns
Yeah.
that would murder people if you didn't get out before dusk.
Fucking sundown.
Before now.
Like, yeah. If you weren't on our way out now, they
That's why the blue book and the green book were even created.
Yeah.
As an almanac for specifically black travelers to know where it was safe for you to stay when you were traveling across America because of sundown towns. So I love it. And I love whenever it pops up into pop culture.
Yeah.
It happened with that HBO show, Lovecraft Country.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's popping up again. This is good. This is a part of history that we have conveniently forgotten. And fun fact for anybody listening, if you want to know where a sundown town is, look into your cities. Like if you want to know that you're living somewhere that used to be a sundown town, look into your city's census. Go back 100 years. If all of a sudden there are no black people in your town, it was a sundown town. You just have to go back to I would say after slavery, but before the civil rights movement, and look to see if there were black people who lived there, and suddenly none.
Yep.
High odds that you are living in a sundown town or county.
Yeah. Yeah, this was a whole fucking county.
Wow.
So one town that was absorbed by the lake was named Oscarville.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can still find Oscarville on a map. Old Oscarville, you cannot because it's underneath the fucking lake.
I know there's got to be a YouTube video that's like an hour long of people just underwater looking at this town.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what I'm going to do tonight. First, I got to record a TikTok, and then I'm going to do this. This is how I'm going to go to sleep tonight.
So, Oscarville is located in Forsyth County.
I have heard of Forsyth County, though.
Yeah, it's a place where I guess Oprah has gone, and it was like an interview that she did, and all the people in there were like, "Yeah, we don't like black people living in our community and stuff like that." I forget when she did this interview, but I remember watching it.
Why do I know Forsyth County?
It's Forsyth.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this Oscarville was apparently reported as being an agricultural miracle because the farmers had beat back bull weevils from their infestation back in the day, and for the farmland, I guess, surviving the Great Depression as well. So, Oscarville's supposed to have been...
I know why it's in my brain.
Why?
Because there's a news article the other day about police shooting a man who called 911 asking for help down in Forsyth.
Oh.
I was like, I know, I just, in my head recently.
I think...
Yeah, they called 911 for help and they got shot.
I think this is the area... Remember that one story? I don't know if I did the story, but it was like one of our... This Week in True Crime.
Mm-hmm.
Where I brought up the woman who had died at her friend's birthday party or some shit like that in Georgia. I think that's around this area too.
Okay.
That this happened. that happened. But yeah, Oscarville is supposed to have been an entire black community that was basically just forced out.
Yeah.
Forced out of the area.
Bet you them boll weevils came back, didn't they?
No. It was those hooded weevils, if you know what I'm talking about. Newport Dam Development kept in touch with the court system to make sure that the state could take the land from these residents. Because they'd ask every resident to give up their land, like to leave their land without like paying and stuff, except for 5 residents. That's it. Everybody else, they're like, you gotta leave. You gotta get out of here. Now there's this book, including Oscarville, that's titled "Blood at the Root: A Racial Cleansing in America," where author Patrick Phillips talks about the 1912 lynchings and the riots that followed the sexual assault and murder of a young white woman named Sleety Mae Crow. She was 18 years old. They accused a black teen of committing the crime, but it's officially an unsolved crime. So as a result of this, around 1,100 black residents fled Oscarville and Forsyth County out of fear of for their lives. So some of the ghosts there that may or may not haunt the lake,
of course,
maybe some black residents that...
Listen, my favorite haunting is I love when slaves haunt people.
Oh yeah,
and I
fun.
also love when indigenous people haunt folks. Yes, and I want people to move on to the afterlife, sure. But if you gotta stay, you might as well make folks' lives miserable.
I mean, yeah. But also, I just wanted to add this. This lake is dangerous as fuck. Don't swim in there. Like, I've seen a picture of it when it was a drought, when there was a drought in Georgia. And there are literal trees and forests underneath the fucking water. Like, there are dead trees in the water. So be careful if you're going, like, if you visit there, then
one of the scariest videos I ever saw was it happened down in like Louisiana, and someone was just watching, and like my thing is, when you know that the ground can do this, it's so like the camera's like watching this like swampy area, and then all of a sudden you just hear a snap, and trees and land across from where this person is like videotaping just sink into the water in front of them, and I'm like, why are you still there? That is death. Yeah, apparently it was an area where there used to be a salt mine, and that salt mine got flooded, and it's still very like unstable, and the ground just sinks into the mine every once in a while. So people go down there to watch it, and I'm like, this is frightening.
It sounds like Centralia.
It yeah, almost kind of. Well, Centralia was a coal mine.
Yeah, but we got the steam coming up out of the ground.
Yeah, the ground isn't like sinking into Centralia.
No, it's
Fun
just on
fact,
fire.
Though, there is a massive sinkhole in a Mexican farmland right now that has currently swallowed 2 houses.
Oh.
Yeah, it was in the news the other day.
Well, look at this.
Sinkholes frighten me.
Yeah, they're.
We talk about things that we find scary. Sinkholes.
They're kind of
riptides.
Yeah, just.
I have like a real fear, like it's almost like an unreasonable fear of riptides.
Huh. I used to be afraid of quicksand until I realized it was slow sand, and then
quicksand is just don't fight it. Let somebody pull you out.
Yeah, basically.
Just stand there and wait.
We used to be afraid of quicksand as kids. That's funny.
Black holes. I used to have an irrational fear of black holes.
Just a little bit, yeah.
It's unpredictable. But there is one thing that I wanted to mention to anybody who's still listening, because this is the end of our show.
It is.
One, thanks for listening. Like we did say, there's going to be Patreon, and one of our tiers is going to be an extra, like we're going to call it its own little podcast. 30 minutes. What did you call it?
Conspiracy Crypt?
Conspiracy Crypt. Yes, that Brian named it, the Conspiracy Crypt.
I'm sorry, I just thought of it on the fly. That's what it's going to be called.
Which is going to be a 30-minute additional extra podcast of us discussing that sort of stuff. And I'm not entirely opposed to the discussion of conspiracies. Just some of them I find just they make my like angry. They make me angry. But some of them I actually do have some really good ones. Like one of my campers the other day came to me and was just like, you know the guy who landed on the moon?
Oh, you told me about this.
Yeah. And I was just like, yeah. And he goes, his name backwards is Alien. He's like, we put an alien on the moon. And I was like, that's really cool. That's really cute. He was very proud of himself.
I'm proud
that
of him.
He discovered the conspiracy that Neil Armstrong is actually an alien.
I love kids sometimes.
So cute.
Oh goodness. But yeah, we'll have our Patreon up,
But
and
yeah,
then we're
gonna have multiple tiers. One just for folks who just want to help, get a little bit of
give us a little push.
And we'll have merch for people who want that.
Yeah. And then we'll have gaming nights.
Right. That's one of the tiers for the
night.
Patreon, is that once a month we'll have a gaming night and you get to be on stream with us and participate.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
And so we'll probably have to max that out at we'll have to cap that.
Yeah, about 5 people, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Gardic Phone, you can technically have a lobby that's 15 plus people.
Oh, there you go. Maybe we could do 10. We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see what happens. We'll see who's even interested, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't want to have, what do they call it? Champagne dreams. We're just gonna we're gonna manage our expectations, and if anybody wants to support us, I'll be shocked.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I'm gonna say too. If anybody puts money in, well, thank you, I appreciate it.
To our 1,500 people who are listening on a weekly basis, thank you so much. This has been a really awesome experience doing this.
Yes.
For you all, and it's totally worthwhile. Even though I have resigned myself to write a 10-page research paper every week for the rest of my life.
It's crazy.
Or until we run out of people to talk about.
There you go.
Who have killed people, but it never stops.
I'm not going to stop finding anything creepy to talk about, and you're probably not going to run out of people killing people.
That's true. So as long as you want us, we're here.
Basically. Oh goodness! And as always, you can find Brittany on TikTok at Cult Podcast.
That's true. Always, almost every single day of the week.
Yeah. You can find me on Twitch at Foxy Trainer. I'm not going to change the name. It's just going to stay Foxy Trainer, whatever. Just find me on Twitch. I didn't stream last weekend because I was out of town, but this weekend I will be playing Doki Doki Literature Club.
The new one came out.
The new one is out on Wednesday.
Oh, nice.
So I'll be playing that.
This one's the pay one, though. The first one was free.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happened, considering at the end of the first game there was
just Monica.
Serious game-breaking stuff that had to be done to save you from a character in the game.
Yeah.
Also, are we going to have to kind of put that under a trigger warning of a stream? Because the first one had some serious triggers.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same amount of stuff. So it's going to be a trigger warning. What else? You could always email us. Email us if you like this, the podcast, or email us if you have any stories you want us to read or research about.
Oh, absolutely. We will look into that.
Yeah. You can email us at cultpodcast@gmail.com.
Or just head over to whenkillersgetcaught.com, which is our official website.
That is. We do have a website, and you can just email us there too and check out we have an archive of all of our episodes now.
All of our archive, and it also shows you every single place that you can listen to it. On the right side of the screen.
It's pretty awesome.
I added my About Me section to the website, and Brian will do that. He was just gone, so he couldn't do it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had stuff to do.
You were on a little vacation.
I was on kid vacation.
It was a little family vacation.
Yes, there you go. But yeah, that's all we got for this week.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good night.